Hello, everyone. Welcome to You and You Perspectives. Over the past 8 years, I've written multiple articles on the U.S. government's trade and tariff wars. Today, I'd like to add a few thoughts in light of a recent Wall Street Journal report titled, Trump Pledged to Bring Back Manufacturing. The Sector Is Sputtering. According to the article, during both his campaigns and time in office, President Trump has repeatedly emphasized his promise to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. But so far, the sector has largely remained in decline throughout most of his second term. From March to July 2025, manufacturing activity in the U.S. continued to shrink. The ISM Manufacturing Index dropped to 48, below the 50-point threshold that separates growth from contraction. Several companies, including Apple, have announced ambitious investments in U.S. manufacturing. Apple, for instance, pledged an additional $100 billion to produce servers and components domestically. However, many of these investment announcements remain unfulfilled. Some are seen as symbolic gestures aimed at appeasing the president. Trump's aggressive tariff policies have pushed the average U.S. import tariff rate from 2.3% last year to about 18%, the highest since the 1930s. Yet experts believe these tariff lows aren't enough to truly bring manufacturing back to the U.S., especially in labor and material-intensive industries like autos and steel. At one point, tariffs on goods from India were even temporarily doubled from 25% to 50%, highlighting the unpredictability of these policies. One major reason companies are reluctant to invest is the uncertainty surrounding trade policy. Tariffs on countries like China and Mexico remain unclear, making long-term planning difficult. Even companies like Whirlpool and Harley-Davidson, which have a significant portion of their production based in the U.S., are scaling back due to weak housing markets, low consumer confidence, and intensified competition from Asian manufacturers. Employment in the manufacturing sector has also struggled. From May to June, the sector lost 26,000 jobs, and preliminary estimates for July show another 11,000 lost. Many firms have frozen hiring or left vacancies unfilled as a precaution. Even when manufacturing does return, challenges like labor shortages and rising material costs persist. Key inputs like steel, copper, and aluminum are also subject to tariffs, which further raises domestic production costs. As one expert put it, American manufacturing is like someone who hasn't been to the gym in 30 years. You can't expect them to lift 100 pounds overnight. The White House insists that since the beginning of this year, nearly $2 trillion in manufacturing-related investments have been announced, spanning nearly 80 projects in factories, data centers, and LNG facilities. But economists point out that it can take years for such projects to move from site selection to actual production. Here's my take. As I mentioned in my July 27 video, let's talk about U.S. tariffs, and supported with multiple empirical studies by American economists. Even in industries that tariffs are designed to protect, real-world data shows the opposite effect. Those sectors often contract further, and their workers face even higher unemployment. I also explained how economists have long documented the phenomenon of overpricing and spillover price effects. Take the example of U.S. washing machine tariffs. Not only did washing machine prices rise more than the tariff itself, but prices of dryers, which weren't even subject to tariffs, also surged, in some cases even more than washing machines. For over a decade, I've used economic principles to explain that both tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers are, at their core, mechanisms that raise transaction costs. And according to the law of demand, higher transaction costs inevitably lead to lower trade volumes. In the real world, this plays out as shrinking trade, which also means fewer labor contracts, and that means higher unemployment. Likewise, Trump's erratic, ever-changing policies introduce a massive degree of uncertainty. This uncertainty itself acts as a transaction cost that discourages investment. That, too, is covered by the basic law of demand in economics. So when we read in the news that corporate America has pledged hundreds of billions in investments under Trump, reporters who dig deeper often find these are mostly empty promises. Sometimes companies repackage existing projects to make them look new just to curry favor with Trump. Other times, they're just PR stunts with no real execution behind them. For example, Apple claimed it would produce 19 billion chips at 24 factories across 12 U.S. states. But Wall Street Journal interviews with industry insiders revealed that most of these are just rebranded existing expenses. There are few, if any, actual new production lines. Is Trump being fooled? Not exactly. He wants to be fooled because he only cares about surface-level wins. That's the nature and the limitation of democratic politics. If a politician can fool voters for a short enough period, the truth doesn't really matter. This reminds me of a previous example. Foxconn's so-called miracle investment during Trump's first term. Trump touted it as a historic win, but it ended up being a disastrous flop, barely better than an abandoned construction site. As the old joke goes, the only ones who still remember are the ones who got burned. Economically, we can take this one step further. Trump's global tariff hikes have actually increased the cost of bringing manufacturing back. And even if factories do return, the inevitable response from other countries, whether through tariffs or non-tariff barriers, will make it harder for U.S. manufacturers to sell their higher-cost goods abroad. This is a lose-lose scenario. The very tariffs that are supposed to restore American manufacturing instead make it more expensive and less competitive internationally. Observing this trend, investors become even more hesitant to bet on U.S. industry. In fact, this exact story already played out in the 1930s. History may not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. That's my take on Trump's tariff policies. If you'd like to learn more, I recommend revisiting my earlier articles in the July 27 video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.